Touch the very bottom of your spine in your mind for a moment. Right there, at the place where your back ends and your body begins to sit, there is a small group of bones most people almost never think about. You do not use them to swing through trees. You do not use them to balance on a branch. You probably only notice them if you fall backward on a hard floor and suddenly discover that this forgotten little part of your body can hurt more than expected. But those bones are not random. They are the remains of something much older than you, older than humans, older than apes, and older than almost everything we think of as normal in the human body. They are the last remains of a tail. And the strangest part is that this is not only a story about ancient animals. It is not only about fossils, monkeys, forests, or some distant creature living millions of years ago. This is also a story about your own body. Because before you were born, while you were still developing, your body briefly began to build a small tail. Not a symbolic tail, and not a joke. For a short time, at the end of your developing spine, there was a real tail-like structure. Then, before you ever opened your eyes, before you ever took a breath, before anyone knew what your voice would sound like, your body changed direction. It stopped growing that tail, absorbed most of it, and left only a small hidden trace behind. That trace is your tailbone. So the real question is not simply, did humans ever have tails? The better question is much stranger. Why did your body start building one if you were never going to use it? Why do you still carry the remains of it now? And what does that tiny, forgotten bone at the base of your spine reveal about where you came from? To understand that, we have to go much farther back than humans. We have to go back before cities, before fire, before tools, before language, and before the first apes moved through the trees. We have to go back to a world where nothing walked upright, because almost nothing walked at all. The story of your missing tail begins in water. Long before there were hands, feet, faces, or voices, there were animals moving through the ancient sea. The first animals with backbones did not have tails as decoration. For them, the tail was the engine of the body. A fish moves forward because its tail pushes against the water. The body bends, the tail sweeps, and the animal travels through the world. That movement is incredibly old. It is older than forests, older than mammals, and older than almost every body part that feels human to us now. The tail began as a way to move, but once animals started leaving the water and crawling onto land, it did not disappear. It came with them. And on land, the tail found new jobs. It helped animals balance, turn, climb, swim, jump, signal, fight, steer, and escape. It became one of the most useful tools a body could have. If you watch a cat jump onto a narrow fence, you can see the tail acting like a living counterweight. If you watch a squirrel race across a branch, the tail helps the body correct tiny mistakes before they become dangerous. If you watch many monkeys move through trees, the tail can look almost like another limb, something that helps the animal hold, balance, and survive in a world where one bad movement could mean falling. For an animal living high in the trees, a tail was not just useful. It could be the difference between safety and disaster. When a branch bent under the body, the tail helped correct the movement. When the animal leaped, the tail helped guide the landing. When the body shifted too far to one side, the tail helped bring it back. In that kind of world, balance was not comfort. Balance was survival. So at first, losing a tail sounds like a terrible idea. Why would evolution remove something so useful? Why would our ancestors give up a tool that had helped animals survive since the ancient ocean? Why would a body throw away something that could help it climb, move, turn, and stay alive? This is where the story becomes more interesting, because our own family line was once part of that world of tails. Go back far enough, and your ancestors were not upright humans walking across open ground. They were small primates living in trees. They moved along branches, climbed with their limbs, watched for danger, searched for food, and tried not to fall. Their world was vertical, unstable, and full of risk. A safe path was not a road on the ground. It was a branch strong enough to hold the body. And those ancestors had tails. This is important because humans did not come from nowhere. Our bodies were not designed from a blank page. We are part of a long chain of animals, and for a very long time, that chain included tails. The tail was part of the old primate body plan, and many of our distant relatives still carry that plan today. That is why so many monkeys still have tails. But humans did not evolve from modern monkeys. That is one of the most common mistakes people make when they hear this story. Modern monkeys are not our grandparents. They are more like distant cousins. We share older ancestors with them, and then the family tree split into different branches. Some branches kept the tail. One branch lost it. That branch became the apes. Gibbons, orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees, and humans all belong to the tailless side of the primate family. This is one of the simplest visible differences between monkeys and apes. Most monkeys have tails, while apes do not. And you do not. Your missing tail is one of the quiet signs that your body belongs to the ape branch of the family. It is a small absence that tells a very large story. But this raises an even stranger question. How does a whole group of animals lose a tail? A tail is not like a coat an animal can take off. It is part of the spine, part of the way the body is built from the beginning. To lose it, the instructions for building the body had to change. Every body begins as a set of instructions being followed. Build the head here. Shape the spine here. Grow the limbs here. Close the skin here. Put the organs in place. Make the heart beat. Keep building until the body can live. Somewhere inside that deep set of instructions, there is a program for building the end of the spine. In many animals, that program runs long enough to make a visible tail. But in the ancestors of apes, something changed. Scientists have found evidence that a small change in one important gene may have helped switch the tail off. The gene is often called TBXT. You do not need to remember the name. The simple way to think about it is this. It is one of the body's instructions involved in building the back end of the spine. Long ago, in the ancestor of apes, a tiny piece of genetic code appears to have landed inside that instruction. Genetic code is like the text your body reads when it builds itself, and this little piece of code slipped into a place where it changed how the instruction worked. It did not rewrite the whole body. It did not create a completely new animal overnight. It seems to have changed how one part of the spine-building instruction was read. And that may have helped make the tail shorter until the visible tail disappeared. This is one of the most surprising things about evolution. A huge change in the body can begin with something tiny in the code. The difference between an animal balancing with a long tail and an ape sitting without one may partly come from a small edit buried deep inside the body's instructions. But evolution does not keep changes simply because they are interesting. A change has to work well enough in the world where the animal lives. So the next question is obvious. Why would losing the tail work at all? The honest answer is that scientists are still not completely sure. There may not be one clean reason. Evolution is usually messier than that. It does not plan ahead, and it does not know what an animal will become millions of years later. It simply keeps testing bodies against the world, and the bodies that survive pass their instructions forward. For early apes, life in the trees was changing. Their bodies were not moving exactly like the smaller-tailed monkeys that ran across branches. Apes became larger. They used their arms more. They climbed upright against tree trunks. They hung below branches. They swung, reached, pulled, and moved through the forest in a different way. When an animal moves under branches with long arms, a tail may matter less than it once did. When the body becomes larger and more upright, a tail may not be as useful as it was for a smaller animal balancing on top of branches. When climbing, hanging, and reaching become more important, the old balancing tool may lose some of its value. At first, losing the tail looks like a weakness, but for early apes, it may have been part of a larger shift in the whole body. The shoulders changed, the back changed, the pelvis changed, and the arms became important in new ways. The animal was not simply losing a tail, its body was moving toward a different style of life. Not better in every possible way, just different in a way that worked. And that difference eventually became part of our story. Much later, after many more changes, one branch of apes began walking on two legs. By then, the visible tail was already gone. But the tailless ape body had become part of a new path. The spine could balance above the hips. The hands were free. The head was carried higher. The body could walk, carry food, hold children, throw objects, make tools, and move across long distances. This does not mean evolution removed the tail because it somehow knew humans would one day stand upright. Evolution does not think ahead like that. But it does mean that the missing tail became part of the body we inherited. A body that could sit, stand, walk, carry, reach, and build. And yet evolution almost never erases old things completely. It edits them. It recycles them. It hides them. Your body is full of traces from older worlds. You have reflexes that made more sense when danger was closer. You have cravings that made more sense when food was rare. You have fear systems that made more sense when darkness could hide predators. You have a social brain that still reacts to rejection as if losing the group could threaten your survival. And at the base of your spine, you have the trace of a tail. The tail did not disappear as if it had never existed. It became smaller, hidden, and folded into the structure of your body. The medical name for this leftover is the coccyx, but the everyday name says more. Tailbone. That name is simple, but it is honest. It is the bone of a tail that is no longer visible. You carry it every day without noticing. It is there when you sit in a chair, when you stand up, when you walk through a modern city, when you hold a phone, when you think about work, messages, food, money, family, or anything else that fills a modern human life. Your world is new, but your body is not. That is why this story matters. It is not just about whether ancient ancestors had tails. It is about how much of the ancient world still lives inside us, quietly shaping the body we use every day. The strangest proof appears before birth. When a human embryo is still very small, the body begins by following old instructions. For a short time, the end of the spine extends beyond the future legs and forms a small, tail-like structure. This happens early, before the body looks anything like the person it will become. Then development changes direction. The tail stops growing. Most of it is broken down and absorbed by the body. A few bones remain and become part of the tailbone. In other words, your body briefly begins to build the old shape, then edits it away. That is a strange thought. Before you had memories, before you had language, before you had a name, your body replayed part of a much older story. It started to grow the tail your ancestors once used, then folded that story inward and hid it at the base of your spine. Most of the time, this process finishes so quietly that nobody ever thinks about it. But very rarely, a baby is born with a small, tail-like growth. These cases are unusual, and they should not be treated like a spectacle. They are medical cases, not entertainment. But they do show something important. The old instructions are still close enough to the surface that, In rare moments, part of the ancient pattern can appear again. The body does not invent that from nothing. It is reaching into an old toolkit, one that most of us keep locked away. And that is what makes the missing tail feel so eerie. It is not completely missing. It is more like a word your body no longer says out loud. The letters are still there. The memory is still there. The old instruction is still buried in the system, even if the final body speaks a different sentence. There is no visible tail. There is only the tailbone. There is only the ghost of what used to be there. And like many changes in the human body, this one may have come with a cost. The tail is part of the spine. It is not a separate object added onto the body. It grows from the same deep developmental system that shapes the lower back and the end of the spinal column. So if a genetic change affects the tail, it may also affect other parts of development. Scientists studying the possible tail loss change found something important. In experiments with animals, similar changes could make tails shorter or remove them. But some animals also showed problems in how the lower spine closed during development. This does not mean the loss of the tail directly causes those problems in humans today. That would be too strong, and the science is not that simple. The careful way to say it is that the ancient change that helped remove the tail may also have carried some risk for the way the lower spine forms. That is not unusual in evolution. It is a trade-off. Trade-offs are everywhere in the human body. Your large brain helped make language, planning, and culture possible, but it also made birth much harder. Walking on two legs freed your hands, but it also helped create backs, knees, and hips that often hurt. Your ability to feel fear helped your ancestors notice danger. But in a modern world, that same system can make people anxious, even when they are safe. Your desire for sweet food helped in a world where sugar was rare, but now it lives in a world where sugar is everywhere. The body is not perfect. It is a history of compromises. Some of those compromises are brilliant. Some are painful. Some helped our ancestors survive, but still leave marks on us now. The missing tail may be one of those compromises. A small edit that helped shape the ape body. A change that may have made new movement possible, and a change that may also have carried hidden costs. This is one of the most important things to understand about evolution. It does not build the best possible body. It keeps whatever works well enough in the world where the animal lives. If a body can move, find food, avoid danger, stay close to others, and survive long enough to pass life forward, that body plan can continue, even if it carries flaws, pain, and strange leftovers. That is why your body is not a clean machine. It is a living archive. It is a stack of old solutions, old accidents, old repairs, and old victories. Some of those old solutions are obvious, like your hands, your eyes, your teeth, and your spine. Others are quieter, and the tailbone is one of the quietest. It does not look dramatic. It does not announce itself. It does not seem important most of the time. But it tells a story that reaches from ancient fish to tree-living primates to early apes to you sitting in a modern room. Think about how strange that is. You can live in a city, use electric light, sleep in a bed, ride in a car, and spend most of your day surrounded by things no ancient human could have imagined. But at the base of your spine, your body still carries evidence of a world before cities, before language, before fire, and before humans. It carries a memory of water, trees, balance, falling, climbing, gripping, and danger. Modern humans often feel separate from animals. We have names, jobs, houses, screens, calendars, and stories about who we are. We explain ourselves with words like personality, culture, ambition, and identity. But the body is older than those words. The body remembers things the mind never had to learn. It remembers hunger. It remembers fear. It remembers needing other people. It remembers old ways of moving through the world. And in one small place, it remembers the tail. That is why this question is more personal than it first sounds. Did humans ever have tails? Yes. Our distant ancestors had real tails. The ape branch lost the visible tail long before humans existed. But the tail never fully disappeared from the story. It became smaller. It became hidden. It became bone. It became something you carry without thinking. And before you were born, your own body briefly showed the old pattern again. It began to build the tail, then erased most of it. So the missing tail is not only behind us in evolution, it is inside us in development. It is written into the way the body builds itself, edits itself, and hides its own history. This is the quiet wonder of the human body. It is not just a body for modern life. It is a museum of ancient life. Your skin, your spine, your hands, your fears, your cravings, your need for connection, your pain, your balance, your sleep, your hunger, and your emotions were all shaped by worlds that no longer exist in the same way. Sometimes the evidence is hidden in fossils. Sometimes it is hidden in genes. And sometimes it is hidden in a part of your own body that you almost never think about, at the very bottom of your spine. So the next time you sit down, stand up, or feel that small place at the base of your back, remember what it really is. It is not just a useless bone. It is the last visible whisper of a tale that began in the sea, followed life onto land, helped primates balance in trees, disappeared in our ape ancestors, and briefly appeared again while your own body was being built. Your missing tail is not truly gone. It is hidden. It is quiet. It is written into your body as a reminder that you are not separate from the ancient world. You are not just a modern person living in a modern room, thinking modern thoughts. You are carrying a much older story under your skin. And at the base of your spine, that story is still there. Small, silent, and folded inward, but not gone.